Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Mr. Ian Teaches English for a pronunciation lesson. Now today's lesson was inspired by one of my students who simply asked for pronunciation help with some common contractions. Now if you're in my class, if you're studying with me, then I will always make you use contractions because it is the most natural way that native English speakers talk. If you are practicing and using sentences with the full form without contractions, I think it's a bad idea because whatever you practice is what you're going to listen for. And I promise you will almost never hear the full form unless somebody's really emotional, usually really angry. So we're going to look at present tense contractions today. We're going to talk about contractions with the verb to be, with the verb to have, and then the negatives of action verbs. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to give you the full form, give you the contraction, and I'll repeat the contraction a few times, and go ahead and try to repeat it after me, trying to make it sound as close to what I said as possible. And also, keep your eyes on my mouth as well. That's a great way to learn, to make sure that when my mouth is open, so is yours. If you see my tongue, you'd use that. Just use it as a visual reference. That's how kids learn language, and so it's a good idea for you too. All right, let's start with be. Now we're going to look at the affirmative and the negatives. Let's start with the affirmatives. I am is I'm. I'm. You are, your. He is, he's. She is, she's. It is, it's. We are, where. And they are, there. All right, those are the affirmatives. Now, you can also use it, for example, with a name as well, and we do contract with that. So, for example, Mr. Ian is would be Mr. Ian's. We put that on there. So, you can practice with your name or your friend's name or the name of some common nouns as well. All right, let's talk about the negative forms of be. Now, the negative forms of be are a little bit more flexible. Sometimes you can contract with the subject and the verb, and sometimes you contract with the verb and the negative word. And you have that option. You can do whatever you want, except with the I am not. I am not is always I'm not. So let's start there. I am not, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. Now, you are not is where you start having choices. You can say you're not, but we've already talked about your. So I'm going to give you you aren't, using the connection with the verb and the negative word. So from here on, I will only give you the verb and the negative word, but just remember that you can do the subject and the verb as well. So, you are not, you aren't. You aren't. You aren't. He is not, he isn't. He isn't. He isn't. She is not, she isn't. She isn't. She isn't. It is not, it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. We are not, we aren't. We aren't. We aren't. And they are not, they aren't. They aren't. They aren't. Now remember, you won't only see these with the simple present tense, but you'll also see those with the present continuous tense as well. So use the same contractions for those. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the verb have. Now, with the verb have, you gotta be a little bit careful because I talked about this in a short a little while ago. You do not, I repeat, do not use a contraction when have is your main verb. Sometimes they do this in Britain, but definitely not here in the United States. If you're learning American English, don't do it. So contractions with have, what I'm talking about are those present perfects and present perfect continuouses. So let's go through the affirmative and then we'll do the negatives. All right. So I have, I've. You have, you've. He has, he's. She has, she's. It has, it's. Now, be careful there because you probably just said to yourself, well, Mr. Ian, that sounds like the verb to be. And you are exactly right. They are the same. It depends on context which one it is. All right, so if it's to be, it's going to be followed by an adjective or a noun usually, or that ing version of the verb in the present continuous. If it is has, it's going to be followed with the the past participle. So be careful, it's what comes after it that tells you what it is. But with experience, it will become more natural. All right, we have, we've. They have, they've. All right, now let's go on to the negatives. Remember, with the negatives, we are not going to make the connection between the subject and the verb. We're going to do it with the verb and the negative word. So we're not going to say I've not. We're going to say I haven't. So let's start with that one. I have not. I haven't. I haven't. I haven't. You have not. You haven't. You haven't. You haven't. He has not. He hasn't. He hasn't. He hasn't. She has not. She hasn't. She hasn't. She hasn't. It has not. It hasn't. It hasn't. It hasn't. We have not. We haven't. We haven't. We haven't. And finally, they have not. They haven't. They haven't. They haven't. All right, so those are the contractions with the verb have. Here we go. I think we've only got one more, which are those action verbs. All right, the last ones that we need to talk about are those present tense of the negatives. So remember, in English, when you create a negative, you're going to use the auxiliary do and then the adverb not. All right, this is for action verbs only, action verbs being not the verb to be. So if your main verb is not to be, then this is how you do it. All right, so let's start off with the first one. I do not. I don't. I don't. I don't. You do not. You don't. You don't. You don't. He does not. He doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't. She does not. She doesn't. She doesn't. She doesn't. It does not. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. We do not. We don't. We don't. We don't. And finally, they do not. They don't. They don't. They don't. All right. That's it for the present tense the present tense contractions when we're talking about the main verbs. There are some other ones, and I'll make another video for little exceptions and things like that. But that's it. That's affirmative be, affirmative have, the negative be, the negative have, and then those action verbs. Now, again, I cannot explain to you how important it is to learn these contractions, to practice them, and to always use them. In English, we always use them unless it is a very formal situation. I mean, very formal, or if we're very angry. So, if I am talking to somebody and I'm very angry with them, I might say, I do not want you to speak. But that's usually only for high emotions. This is important because the English that you practice is the English that you will use. It is the English that you will listen to or listen for. If you are waiting for someone to say, he has not called me, you never hear it. All right? People are going to say, he hasn't called me. And if you're not practicing that contracted form, it's going to make it more difficult to recognize it when people speak it. So, I know you might love the full forms. You might think they're easy. Stop it. Stop using them. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm going to have another form of this video where I talk about the past tenses and the future tenses, and then some of the more specialty ones. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead, if you have questions about it, put it in the comments. If you disagree, if you say, Mr. Ian, you're a terrible English teacher, and this is why, put it in the comments. Any comments make it more likely that people see these videos. So let me know if there's anything I can help you with as your online English teacher. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming.